Hi guys, Jared here with Day Traders FX. I hope you guys are having a great week. We've seen some good movement this week and we've seen some crazy stuff. Let's talk a little bit about all of it. Today's been a pretty bad day for the U.S. markets. You can see the Dow's down almost 100 points, S&P about 13 points down. Gold recovered a little bit. It's kind of been pushing a bit higher here, and oil you can see is still staying in kind of the lower mid 90s, which is above the 90 flat that we saw not so long ago. So those are kind of hanging in there a bit. We've seen quite a bit of news over the last kind of 12 hours. French and German PMI. We had retail sales for the UK, which came out much better than expected. We had retail sales for Canada, unemployment numbers for the US, existing home sales, which came out just about in line with expectations, a tiny bit less. Um, and so on. So it's been pretty active there. As far as tomorrow goes, we don't have any major news. As always, we don't have an official session on Friday morning, but I do kind of check in and send out a few tweets and check into the chat and see if there's any opportunities for kind of later Friday morning. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Let's get down to the business here. We are still watching negotiations trying to pan out in Cyprus, namely with the deadline that the ECB has given Cyprus of Monday to figure out a deal, or negotiations are going to get a lot more complicated at that point. That's, you know, governments talking. It's not like they're pulling the do or die kind of a thing, even though the news headlines and everything are trying to make it seem that way. But for the most part, there is a deadline of of Monday, of a bailout deal. So expect some more volatility on the euro dollar or euro pairs at the open of the market next week. But to kind of finish things out, overall, I don't see how this can end too positively. Yes, maybe they get bailed out, but then Plan B is still there's major temptations with that levy that has all of the European banks and countries kind of on their toes a little bit. So it's pretty much a scary situation overall. So technically speaking, I'm just going to be watching a couple of things. First of all, the euro dollar has stayed below the weekly high that was made at the very first of the week. We've stayed below that all week long, and that's a pretty good psychological level, which is the 130. We're about 129.95, so we'll just call it 130. We've stayed below that pretty nicely all week long, and so far I just don't see that we're having any kind of major attempts at that. But what I will watch is this nice little descending trend line that goes from our Friday high on down to yesterday's high and today's high, and we get a breakout of that. And I think we've got some nice movement there. Now we have a couple of opportunities. Opportunity A is to just trade against today's low. Right now, right where markets sit, 15 to 20 pips off of today's low, which is 128.80. We have an opportunity to just buy and see if we can get that push up, because there still is a chance of a little bit of a test, maybe a double top somewhere in here. Just because we get a little run up doesn't mean that things are that the trend's changing and everything's very positive, but could end up being the case. So I'm just looking for maybe a short-term test of this weekly pivot point, which you can see is, a good 45, 50 pips away. The 200 moving average is 60 plus pips away, and then our weekly high is just about 100 pips away from current market price. So these are all good targets to aim for, and I think trading against this daily low right here, ultimately the safest bet would be trading against the weekly low, which puts us about 50 pips away. But if you're looking for a shorter-term trade, trading against this daily low is a good option, because I'm going to talk about another thing that we can do against this daily low. But overall, if we can stay above that 128.80, which has turned out to be a pretty crucial level, I think we have a good chance of at least reaching that weekly pivot, which is, about 45 to 50 pips of potential movement here, with a risk of about 20 pips against that daily low. So that is option A for this euro dollar, because overall we're kind of in the middle of this trend here, but we seem to be holding on to this December low pretty well. We've kind of broken below it, then we kind of get right back above that again. Remember, we have kind of some train tracks right here. We have a nice long downward candle and then a bullish candle of the same size directly afterward, but it failed to break the high of those two candles. This third candle here, so it's kind of invalidating those to some degree, but overall we're still holding for the most part above that 28.80. So that's a short-term move that we can take there. The next option is just trading the break of this ascending trend line and ultimately trading the break of 128.80 itself and trading it into the weekly low, which again is only about 35 pips. And I'm just a little bit apprehensive about my bigger target, which is 126.60. I think we can get there, but I think it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. So getting to that 126.60 is going to be, a little bit of a longer term view, even though it's only about 200 and change pips away. But I think we can get there, especially with Cyprus news. So essentially short at the break of 128.80 into the weekly low here, which is just about 128, 45-ish or so. So that's kind of a nice little opportunity there. Our pound dollar is kind of playing out here. We had a pending order earlier down after this little dip, and it hasn't come back to that yet. The pound dollar is still looking fairly good, but we haven't broken 152.20. This is still, everybody expects this to break. Everyone expects us to have an inverted head and shoulders pattern, which could very likely be the case. But it still is quite having quite a difficult time with breaking that neckline, which is around the 150-220 area. So we break that, and we're immediately coming into contact with a 200 moving average and a couple of things there. So overall, I'm starting to get a little bit bullish on this pound dollar for a potential run into, remember, 158.80. We have missed weekly pivots back there. We have missed daily pivots. We have a lot of good targets. That was a level that we talked about, not so long ago, but it's been a couple of weeks now. Remember, we have 155.80 is a missed daily pivot. We have missed weekly pivots all through that zone there. So that becomes a pretty realistic target for things. But I'm still interested in probably buying a little bit more on the dip if I can get long on the pound dollar around 151.20, 30 with stops below probably 150.75. I think that's a fairly safe bet for that run into 152.20 and then potentially 154.00 as a longer term target. So that's kind of where I'm standing on that pound dollar. Our Aussie dollar trade played out nicely yesterday. We just talked simply about the break of our Friday high, which also happened to fill this gap and do all the rest of the stuff we needed. And we saw that break happen, and it ran up a good 40 pips, and it's kind of consolidating about 20 pips above the level. So we're playing out pretty nicely here. We do have a little bit of a reversal candle on this 4-hour chart, but we're only at the kind of middle of this 4-hour range. And I think we've still got plenty of potential for a bit of a run higher. But remember, I'm looking at this as our big resistance, and this may be able to stop the market. That's about 104.75 area, and that puts us at the top of the channel and at the top of this little reversal candle pattern right here. So we came pretty close to that. We got into about 104.57, so came just about 20 pips shy of that area. That's kind of what I'm looking for right now. The only thing I would be interested in doing is if we get a bit of a bigger break, I would be interested in buying the dip into about 104.05 to about 104.10. So we're really just kind of just below this area, even the 104.13, but I want to get just a little bit closer to 104.00. So about 104.05-ish area is what I'm liking. I think we have a little bit more support down there as well, and I think that'd be a good area to pick up a buy on the dip of this Aussie dollar. So it's only 30 some pips of retracement, 35 pips of retracement right in that general area, but I think we have a good chance of picking up some buys at that point. And running it on up to the top there. We're going to need some big-ish stops. I want to get below the daily low here, which is around 103.30, or excuse me, 103.60. But I think we've got a good chance of that, so that's one thing I'll be looking for. And then last but not least, the last detail that we've been talking about here is the Euro Aussie, and this was one trade that we discussed yesterday in the daily wrap-up session, which was getting down to this 123.50. And the only thing that I want to see kind of play out is to make this work, we need to get some decent retracement on the Aussie dollar, which is staying fairly bullish, and the Euro dollar is kind of turning a little bit more bearish, and that's the thing that makes me nervous. We had this huge bearish engulfing candle down to that support, and now we still see that Aussie dollar remains strong, Euro dollar remains weak. and that's not favorable for a bounce off of this. So I'm kind of, I think this is a good support still. We're at the bottom of the channel, sitting on a nice existing monthly low and so on. But I think that we need to see a little bit of a cross correlation. We need to get the Aussie dollar back below probably 104, 13 area, and we need to get the euro dollar above about 129.50 before I'm going to feel really good about getting into this long. So it's kind of a level I'm watching, but I'm probably not going to take a trade for the next several hours. One thing to look at is on the smaller time frames. You can see a little bit of a short-term trend line forming here. On the Euro Aussie, and if we get a break of that, then I think things look better for that long opportunity and that trading up to those upper targets. But it's heavy. It's heavy to say the least right now. So just kind of bear that in mind. But I think the setup is good, and it's worth keeping an eye on over the next several hours. But I may not get an entry on that as soon as this evening. So those are the ones we're looking at for now. Good luck on things. We'll have a daily wrap-up session. If you'd like to join us on those daily wrap-up sessions, we are live in the chat every 12 hours, 4 a.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Pacific, for live sessions. You can get a free trial at Daytraders FX if you'd like to join the group and trade alongside of us. Thanks a bunch, everyone. Best of luck, and I will see you in the chat.